Hi, I'm John Little, and this is the ShockCast for Monday, May 7th, 2018, for the article written on Friday, May 4th. A stage set for war. The world is preparing for war. Some hope to stay out of it. Some push for it. Some fear losing it. And you can tell that it's coming because of what the players are doing to move into what they think of as the best position for winning this war. The fear in everyone's heart is that this will be a world war that will engulf the globe, and that's a valid fear, since the great powers are the ones doing the maneuvering. Unfortunately, the focus is, and will be, Israel. She didn't start out as the focus. She certainly doesn't want to be the focus, but she'll be the focus, and the world will be shaken by what happens. Very few people actually want war. Most would rather get what they want without fighting for it, although there are some who enjoy the death and destruction that war causes, but those people are often hard to distinguish from those who are merely greedy for money and power. And determining the specifics of what people want can be difficult. Yes, they want money and power, but their geography tends to determine the specifics of what they are striving for. And I use the term geography in its most accurate meaning. And I find that Wikipedia has an exceptionally accurate description of what geography is. Quoting from Wikipedia, geography, from the Greek geographia, literally earth description, is a field of science devoted to the study of the lands, the features, the inhabitants, and the phenomena of Earth. The first person to use the word geographia was Eratosthenes. Geography is an all-encompassing discipline that seeks an understanding of the Earth and its human and natural complexities, not merely where objects are, but how they have changed and come to be. Geography is often defined in terms of the two branches of human geography and physical geography. Human geography deals with the study of people and their communities, cultures, and economies, and interactions with the environment by studying their relations with and across space and place. Physical geography deals with the study of processes and patterns in the natural environment like the atmosphere, hydrosphere, biosphere, and geosphere. The four historical traditions in geographical research are spatial analysis of natural and the human phenomena, area studies of places, regions, studies of human-land relationships, and earth sciences. Geography has been called the world discipline and the bridge between the human and the physical sciences. I just find it interesting that the first man to accurately calculate the circumference of the Earth was Eratosthenes, and he was only 10% off, and he would be the one to coin the term geography. Unfortunately, most of what people call geography is actually cartography. The point is that everyone is, let's get back to our point. The point is that everyone is greedy. The difference is the context of a nation's greed, and that context is what rules the decisions that nations make to satisfy that greed. And some nations are more greedy than others, although normally the amount of greed that we see tends to be the result of an opportunity to be greedy. Just because a country doesn't appear to be greedy doesn't mean that they aren't. But let's get back to our focus on the war that is brewing. So, who are the greedy persons of uncertain parentage that are determined to take the world to war? The answer to that one is a lot more complicated than you might think, but we'll start as simply as possible, with two lists of nations in two broad categories. First, the greedy nations. The United States, Russia, Iran, China. And then we have the fearful nations, Sunni Arabs, Israel. Please understand that the heart of this war has been and always will be greed. When Paul said to Timothy, "For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." 1 Timothy 6:10. He wasn't kidding. And this evil is all about the love of money. But greed isn't the whole story. There's also a tremendous amount of fear, especially from those nations with the most to lose, and it's interesting how far the Sunnis have fallen. But let's start with our list of countries that are the greedy ones, the ones that may be led from those of uncertain parentage. The United States. Anyone who believes that America is just trying to be a good influence on the world is a moron. Since her very beginning, America has been attempting to expand her power and reach. First within North America, later Central and South America. After that, she attempted to project power into Europe, Asia, and now Africa. There is no place on earth where America's reach is not felt, and everyone is more than a little afraid of making America angry. Why is America doing this? The wealth generated by all of this power is nothing short of amazing. It has made New York and Washington incredibly wealthy. And the fat cat bankers, wow, have they been raking it in. By making by now almost every, currency exchange transaction in the world go through New York, America has been able to skim off an amazing amount of money from everyone. And then there's the petrodollar. The petrodollar system is the reason why everyone tolerates this situation, because everyone needs dollars to buy the fuel that powers their cars and scooters. And because of that, the world bows to America. And they make sure that Americans get lots of inexpensive stuff so that they can get the dollars for the fuel that they need. Remember, I'm sitting in Taiwan and we know all about that. Think of it as America becoming the slave master of the world, and anything that shrinks this system of slavery will make the fat cats in New York and Washington howl. 4 years ago, I wrote a series of articles on this, and the first one, and I give a list of all 4, but I also do a summary, and you might be interested in it, and it also was a ShockCast of 4 years ago. That ShockCast and the description of it is the core of the empire, and America will do anything to keep it. The problem is that there are other greedy so-and-sos who also want a piece of the pie. Russia. For most of Russia's history, she was mostly interested in achieving borders that could help her defend herself. Russia is incredibly flat, and Russia's enemies have traditionally been able to advance quickly and easily into Russia. So Russia has a legitimate need for mountains and oceans on her borders. And she has them. The problem now is that Russia doesn't produce much that the rest of the world wants, except oil, natural gas, and weapons. Oh, and rocket engines. That is a big limit to Russia's ability to become wealthy. Furthermore, the U.S. has proclaimed herself as an enemy to Russia's desires to prosper. And that is a huge threat. So think of Russia's actions as a result of both greed and fear. They want to make money, but they also know that the morons in Washington want them dead. Now, do you remember the point that I made about Russia seeing the Middle East as a part of its natural hegemony? Here's what I said last week. And it was about a PowerPoint slide pack from the presentation by Igor Sechin, CEO of Rosneft, made in Verona in October of 2017. And when you go to slide 14 and 16, you'll see how Russia views the Middle East. They consider the Middle East as a vital objective for dominance. It's all about oil. And if they can't get control through diplomatic means, they will get it through military means. I found a mention of Sechin's presentation in thecairoreview.com, and you'll find more in that article, but the main thing to take away from all of this is a heightened interest in the Middle East, a very heightened interest. Now, take what I said there last week and add this quote from an article that you will see again in the research. Quote, "It is from this perspective that Russia's renewed interest and intervention in the Middle East must be understood. By consolidating all 3 energy-producing regions under its leadership, Russia can be a true equal to China in shaping the new Eurasian system. Its interests lie now more decisively in organizing a common political will for the core energy production region than in recovering old yearnings about being a part of Europe. This is from an article called "The Biggest Player in the History of the World" from strategicculture.org. That, my friends, is greed. Plain and simple. Russia sees the opportunity for power and it's taking it. But they're trying to do it as cheaply as possible, and that means allies. Lots of them. Enter Iran. Iran and Russia share the Caspian Sea, and they have a rapidly growing relationship of convenience. Iran needs access to foreign markets, and Russia can give it to them for a price. And Iran seems willing to pay that price. Iran also has another need: the destruction of Israel and the United States. The mullahs in Tehran need a raison d'etre, a reason for being. At one time, it was enough to oppose the Shah. Now that they are in power, they have a pressing need to justify their existence. For them, justifying their existence means destroying Israel at all costs. And no, I'm not engaging in hyperbole in any way. Who do you think started the quaint tradition of Jerusalem Day, the big protest against Israel's control of Jerusalem, on the last Friday of Ramadan? That's right, the Iranians. And they have gone on to claim that the Mahdi will not return unless Israel is destroyed first. So this has become a sacred duty as well as a way of staying in power. The other thing that the Iranians want is access to the Mediterranean Sea. Access to the Med is a big deal for trade as well as for power projection. And then there's China. This other country that wants access to the Mediterranean is China. Since they don't want their trade routes to go through Russia, they are stuck with having to thread their new Silk Road through the areas south of the Caucasus Mountains. That means going through Iran and Syria, and maybe Turkey. So China will make the most of any opportunity for an alliance with Iran and for any rebuilding efforts in Syria once the war is over. However, China would prefer that others do their dirty work in this region. Then we have the fearful countries, and the Sunnis are terrified of Iran, and now Russia. In fact, they are so terrified that they are willing to make peace with Israel. It's that bad. The problem is that they are resolutely incompetent in the art of war, so they need Israel to help them out, and Israel is ready to help for her own reasons. This is where we get to the core of the issue, and I'm truly sorry that it has taken this long. Israel is afraid, and has every reason to be. Iran has made it clear that the complete annihilation of Israel is a non-negotiable requirement, and Iran has invested a tremendous amount of her economy into the effort to destroy the only rational country in the Middle East. That's why Israel has consistently attacked Iranian targets within Syria. And as the Syrian war winds down, Israel must increase her efforts to dislodge Iran from Syria. Israel knows that any Iranian presence in Syria will be used as a forward base for war with Israel. And up to now, Israel had a relatively free hand in destroying any Iranian presence in Syria that they could find. But that is about to change. Russia has promised to sell Syria the one weapon system that Israel fears the most, the S-300 anti-aircraft system. The only system more dangerous to the Israelis is the S-400. During the Yom Kippur War in 1973, Israel lost 25% of her air force in the opening hours of the war to surface-to-air missiles, aka SAMs. Israel cannot allow a repeat of this situation. The only reason, aside from the hand of God, that Israel has survived the wars that she has fought is due to the Israel Air Force. By being able to dominate the sky, Israel was able to defeat vastly superior enemies. But the S-300 threatens to end Israel's ability to achieve air superiority. I cannot stress enough the need for Israel to destroy those missiles before they become operational. If Israel does not, then Iran will have the defensive umbrella that she needs to establish bases in Syria, supply advanced weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon, and launch attacks into Israel with little fear of retribution. That cannot be allowed, and the world will not understand all that because the mainstream media won't help anyone understand that. This is why the next war in the Middle East is inevitable. Russia will supply those missiles to Syria. Iran will use those missiles as a shield, so Israel will attempt to destroy those missiles at any cost. Israel's history provides no other option for Israel, none. And I do not see Russia delaying this shipment. Iran, Russia, and China will do their best to take advantage of this situation, and America will do the same. The ones who suffer the most will be the Sunni Arabs, Israel, and the Syrians. And then it will lead to and the thing is this, and the end result of all this, the intermediate result of all this, it will lead to the destruction of Damascus and the fulfillment of Isaiah 17. Unfortunately, Isaiah 17 foretells this, quote, "The fortress also shall cease from Ephraim, and the kingdom from Damascus, and the remnant of Syria. They shall be as the glory of the children of Israel, saith the Lord of hosts. And in that day it shall come to pass that the glory of Jacob shall be made thin, and the fatness of his flesh shall wax lean." Isaiah 17, verses 3 and 4. It will also lead to something far, far more destructive, Gog and Magog. That alliance is growing. Iran, Russia, Turkey, and the Central Asian republics are binding themselves closer and closer together. We only need Somalia/Sudan and Libya to join them for the prophecy laid out in Ezekiel 38 and 39 to come to fruition. And if you think that this doesn't pose a threat to your personal safety, think again. Because along with Gog and Magog comes something that I have called Ezekiel's fire. That, my friends, will kill you. The preparations for that fantastic solar event are being made as we speak. And the result will be death by thirst, starvation, and violence for anyone and everyone who does not have easy access to water, a dependable source of food, and a community to defend them. Will you be ready for Ezekiel's fire when it arrives? I wrote a book about Ezekiel's fire. It's called ezekielsfire.com. You can download the whole book in PDF, or you can read it online in the chapters. I'll be making some additions in terms of the archive section. I'm still at work on that, and hopefully it will be finished within a few weeks. There's a lot to do. But let's get on to the research that I did over the past week. Nevada Supreme Court LVPD, Las Vegas Police Department, to release info, and this is a YouTube video from Bill Still, and this is interesting. Why has the Las Vegas Police Department been dragging their feet over releasing the evidence from this shooting? And then Bill raises the point about the numbers of Republicans that are resigning. There are a very large number of them, and some in Congress are claiming a fear of assassination. I find that to be interesting and deeply ominous. Then, oil hedge fund manager Durand says $300 a barrel oil, not impossible. And this is from Bloomberg. I am continually surprised at the reluctance that people have to actually look at reality. It's that flat earth mentality that I've been talking about. I see it in churches, I see it in finance, I see it in the economics, I see it in those drivers that insist on accelerating towards a red light. I certainly see it in flat earthers, and I see it in this quote. Quote, Pierre Durand, one of oil's most prominent hedge fund managers, said the current reluctance of energy companies to invest in new production meant $300 a barrel oil was not impossible within a few years. Close quote. Why are energy companies so reluctant to invest in new oil wells? Because the oil that they are finding is harder and harder to pump out of the ground. and there's less of it when they find it. And it's more expensive to extract, to get to all you could, the list goes on. That is peak oil, kids, and we aren't doing anything about it. Next, how to win an argument with flat earth conspiracy theorists. And this is from Vice. The Daily Star had an article about another moron who believes that the earth is flat. However, I refuse to post articles from the Daily Star since they post pornography and highly sexualized images, and I will not have anything to do with that, period. The Daily Star is a disgusting and awful news organization, and they should be boycotted. Dirtbags. So when I went looking for an alternative to that article, I found this one. Of course, you can't win an argument with a flat earther because flat earthers aren't interested in the truth. Just like preterists, communists, Democrats, atheists, evolutionists, Muslims, Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, pre-tribbers, anti-Semites, and a host of others. So, to you flat earth morons, FEMs, either show me a picture of the edge of the earth or shut up. And I have a cousin who is an air traffic controller down in Antarctica, although currently he's back in the US. My cousin can tell you that there's no edge to the earth. This article will also prove that the earth isn't flat. But like I said, the love of the truth exists in the hearts of fewer and fewer people these days. In fact, Paul speaks eloquently about this time in this era. And yes, he's also talking about you, flat earthers. Quote, "And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming." Of course, he's talking about the Antichrist. "Even him, whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they received not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this cause God shall send them a strong delusion, that they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness." 2 Thessalonians 2, verses 8 through 12. Now, will you go to hell if you believe that the earth is flat? Of course not. You'll go to hell for other reasons, and not having a love of the truth is a sure way to get to those other reasons. So to those flat earther morons who persist in their desire to believe that the earth is a disk being carried about on the back of a turtle, you are in danger of believing any number of stupid and foolish things. My hope is that you will wise up before you fall for something that will get you damned to hell. And yes, that is possible. Seriously, the mark of a true Christian is a love of the truth. Without a love of the truth, you cannot be a Christian. However, without the love of the truth, you cannot see Christ. Without a love of the truth, you cannot find or stay on the narrow way that Jesus spoke of that leads to life. So, love the truth and stop being a moron. Next, Bill Binney. It's next to impossible communicating safely. The NSA know our weaknesses. Governments around the world are working hard to find ways to monitor, predict, and then control their citizens. Every government, without exception. And those governments with more money are able to accomplish this more easily than other governments. When you think about it, the mark of the beast is just such an effort. The only difference between that awful future and now is that our current batch of governments is trying to spy on us and manipulate us without your knowledge. They don't want to spook you into doing something rash like, I don't know, demanding that Congress slash their budgets. They would hate to have their budgets slashed. Their howls of outrage would be heard around the world. So don't do that if you don't like to hear howling. Me? I just love to hear such howls. It's the finest kind of music to my ears. The more, the louder, the better. The other interesting thing is that monitoring and control is very, very easy. The only reason why they aren't doing more of it is that they're government workers. They have government workers. They hire government workers. Governments, by definition, don't have the sharpest employees. Why work for the morons at the NSA when you can have better pay, better working conditions, and more freedom working in Silicon Valley? I worked for the government once. I'll never do that again, ever. I would rather die. I kid you not. But with surveillance being so easy, even numbskull government workers can do it, and of course the government has the help from Google, Facebook, and others. The bottom line is that there is no way that you can hide your communications. It's just not possible. At least for the average person, so don't kid yourself. They know where you are. They know what you are doing. They know why you are doing it. The only ray of hope that I can offer is that Ezekiel's fire will come before the Antichrist arrives. It's a bleak hope because many, many, many will die. But it is something, especially for those with the will to preserve themselves and their families. Next, daily presidential tracking poll. Rasmussen reports. This demonstrates one thing and one thing only: the propaganda power of the foul and evil mainstream media. Their unrelenting torrent of lies and half-truths has corrupted the thinking of America. And this has nothing to do with supporting or disagreeing with Donald Trump. This is about truth and the ability to get access to it. The insanity that grips America should scare everyone, and that is not hyperbole. Just look at the destruction of America's relationship with Russia. Look at the enabling of America's nuclear weapons programs. Look at the debate over illegal immigration, which is also illogical. Look at the promotion of insane sexual values. These are all insanities produced in America and thrust out into the world. And these incredible insanities are a direct threat to the stability of the world. I can hardly believe it myself. But I have to believe it since I see the direct effects of it here in Taiwan. Next, nearly half of all Americans support job guarantee from MSNBC. Here is yet another insanity created by the education system and promoted by the foul and evil mainstream media, of which MSNBC is a part of. Look, we've all been there, unemployed and not knowing what will happen to you if you don't get a job before you lose your house, your car, and even your family. I get that, and I hate it with a passion. I've been there, and I've felt all of that. But this socialist mentality that has swept through America is the same mentality that will give rise to the Antichrist. The Antichrist will promise everyone a job. He'll promise all the food, housing, and entertainment that you want. And that is the same mindset as 47% of America. Think that through. If you want to push back against the coming of the Antichrist, then you need to get rid of socialism everywhere that you find it. Next, the biggest player in the history of the world. I mentioned this earlier, and as I watched China create the prototype for the Antichrist system, it is disturbing to see that China is positioning herself to be the power in the world. Xi Jinping is the single most powerful man in the world. His power and control are completely unprecedented, and his ascent to power would have been unimaginable just 20 years ago. Xi, again pronounced like she, has done more in less time, with less violence, than any other man that I know of. It's as if something dark and powerful was backing him, although there's no evidence of that in any way. Here's a quote. And here's the rub. The world which Xi envisions is wholly incompatible with Washington's priorities. Xi is not only more powerful than any predecessor other than Mao, he knows it and intends to make his mark on world history, one that equates or even surpasses that of Mao. Lee Kuan Yew, who before his death in 2015 was the world's premier China watcher, had a pointed answer about China's stunning trajectory over the past 40 years. The size of China's displacement of the world balance is such that the world must find a new balance. It is not possible to pretend that this is just another big player. This is the biggest player in the history of the world. The year 2021 marks the centenary of the Chinese Communist Party's founding, and Xi clearly intends that in 2021, China will showcase the achievements of its first centenary goals. By then, China expects to be the most powerful economy in the world. It's already there on a purchasing power parity basis, and an emerging world-class power, both in political and military terms. Close quote. Now, the article is more about trade and economics, which is China's strength, but you'll need to remember that the book of Revelation speaks of the power of the Antichrist being all about trade and economics. The mark is about the ability to buy and sell, in addition to identifying you as someone who isn't in alliance with God. Who isn't in alliance with the Antichrist. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I need to read my stuff better. In addition to identifying you as someone who is in alliance with the Antichrist. That's what the mark does. Am I saying that China is the dragon of Revelation? I'm not, and I can't. The Bible doesn't say this, but I am saying that China is laying the groundwork for the beast system that will be ruled by the Antichrist. Now, do you remember the point that I made about Russia seeing the Middle East as a part of its natural hegemony? I mentioned it before, and I'll repeat it again. This is from the article about the slide pack. This is the PowerPoint slide pack, and I give the link. From the presentation that Igor Sechin, CEO of Rosneft, made in Verona in October 2017. And again, I'm repeating myself, but you need to hear this. And when you go to slide 14 and 16, you'll see how Russia views the Middle East. They consider the Middle East as a vital objective for dominance. It's all about oil. And if they can't get control through diplomatic means, they will get it through military means. I found a mention of Sechin's presentation in thecairoreview.com. And you'll find more in that article, but the main thing to take away from all this is a heightened interest in the Middle East. A very heightened interest. And I go on to say, there's another quote, it says from the article that I mentioned, it is from this perspective that Russia's renewed interest and intervention in the Middle East must be understood by consolidating all three energy-producing regions under its leadership. Russia can be a true equal to China in shaping the new Eurasian system. Its interests lie now more decisively in organizing a common political will for the core energy production region than in recovering old yearnings about being a part of Europe. And the political will is Xi's project too. Whereas once Mao's Cultural Revolution tried to wipe out China's ancient past and replace it with a communism's new socialist man, Xi has increasingly portrayed the party as the inheritor and successor to a 5,000-year-old Chinese empire, brought low only by the marauding West, writes Graham. And this was written by Graham Allison, author of Destined for War, Can America and China Escape Thucydides' Trap? Thus the party has evoked past humiliations at the hands of Japan and the West to create a sense of unity that had been fracturing, and to define a Chinese identity fundamentally at odds with American modernity. Finally, Xi has pledged to make China strong again. He believes that a military that is able to fight and win wars is essential to realizing every other component of China's rejuvenation. America has more military structure than China, but Moscow has technologically better weapons. But China too is catching up in this respect with the West fast. The direct strategic military cooperation between China and Russia, China stood behind Russia militarily as well as politically, was evident in the recent US and UK Infowar thrust, Skripal and chemical weapons in Syria, against Russia. It acts as a deterrent against US military action undertaken against either state. Now back to me. Russia and China are directly involved in the rise of Gog and Magog, but it is China that is laying out the foundation for the system that will be used by the Antichrist. China doesn't want to rule the world, at least not like the morons in Washington, D.C. But China does want to keep increasing in prosperity. They will want to destroy any barriers to that prosperity. Of course, that's a path that will eventually lead to world domination and rule, but it's a bit of a different path than the path desired by the megalomaniacal persons of uncertain parentage that are attempting to create a new American century. Now moving on. The next is early Facebook investor and Zuckerberg mentor. I feel my baby has turned out to be something horrible, and this is from Zero Hedge. Do you remember all the hullabaloo over Zuckerberg and Facebook and how they are stealing and misusing your private information to manipulate you? You do? Well, it appears that most people have forgotten, and some people who helped Facebook get to where it is now feel really guilty about how they helped Facebook become such a monster. Yep, guilt is good. Unfortunately, they're not doing enough to stop Facebook. Then, move over Chernobyl. Fukushima is now officially the worst nuclear power disaster in history. Well, hey, it's quite a feat. Fukushima is actually 6 to 8 times more of a disaster than Chernobyl, just in the release of radioactive particles into the air. We aren't even talking about what has been going on in the Pacific, what has been going into the Pacific. This is an unimaginable disaster, and I can only thank God that the Pacific current moves north of us so that Taiwan doesn't get all of this radioactivity. Next, end of sex? Futurist says lab-grown babies in 20 to 40 years. From the Alex Jones InfoWars, there's a war on for your mind. This might surprise you, but this makes a lot of sense, and futurists have been predicting this for a very long time. The only question is, why haven't they been able to do this before now? Basically, hatch babies from artificial wombs. Well, I suspect that God has been blocking this. Satan certainly would have wanted to be able to do this, but has not been able to make this happen. Remember that it only takes the right environment, the right artificial oxygenation, and the right nutritional support to have an artificial womb. There's certainly no reason why it cannot happen, except that God has been blocking it. Well, God has been pulling away the blocks against the coming of the Antichrist, so expect research into something like this to go ahead more quickly. Now, following on from this, there's this article, Chart Where Babies Are Born Outside of Marriage, from Statista or Statista or whatever. This is by Martin Armstrong, but it's a different Martin Armstrong than we are used to hearing from. Not the same of Armstrong economics, but it's still a good article. Anyway, 60% of babies in France are technically bastards, whereas only 9% in Greece are bastards. I'm impressed by Greece. The next question is whether the abortion rate is as high, and at 15%, it's actually lower than the US. Bravo, Greece. So not only does Greece value marriage, they also value life. I think that I like Greece a lot more than I did before. My preference is the Greek islands, but even the Greek mainland would do for me. The next is facts about abortion. U.S. abortion statistics. My look into the abortion statistics to see how Greece compared to the U.S. led me to this page. And I am sickened by the selfish reasons why people choose to murder their children. These are the top 3 reasons why women murder their unborn babies. And in increasing numbers, 19%, they're just done having children. 23%, can't afford a baby. 25%, not ready for a child yet. With all the parents out there that are looking to adopt, they would dare to murder their unborn babies for so trivial a reason? How sick. Next, Taiwan won't bow down to China pressure. Plans to purchase 108 U.S. Abrams tanks. From Zero Hedge. So, finally, Taiwan is upgrading its military. The government here has been complacent for far, far too long. I'm not sure that the M1 Abrams tank is appropriate for Taiwan's terrain and built-up areas. Hopefully, they will also be investing in lighter, more maneuverable vehicles. But finally, they're starting to take the threat from China seriously. Then 65% of public school 8th graders not proficient in reading, 67% not proficient in math. This is a disaster. How can a nation survive and thrive with results like this? How can students be so ignorant and unable to read and do math? This is insane. I don't understand why people and parents and communities will sit still for this. Does anyone understand the seriousness of this situation? I don't have words, really, to explain, to express how incredible this is. Next, Mandalay Bay shooting, body camera footage released. No broken windows reported from Zero Hedge. And this is from the Las Vegas shooting. Here is more grist for the mill on the Las Vegas shooting. I'm not sure why they didn't see any broken windows when they entered the room. It should have been obvious. Broken windows from that height should have pulled the drapes and the wall coverings out, and so they would have been able to see broken windows. Why did they not? Smell a fish. Smell a rotten fish. Smell a rat. Whatever you want to call it. Okay. Now let's get into some corruption. Now, I'm quoting here, but I want to tell you that I believe that this quote, what he's about to say, is entirely biblical and is not used for scatological reasons. Quote, "God damn you to hell. Ex-Trump aide slams Senate over financial ruin caused by Russia probe, Zero Hedge." And I have to agree. God damn them to hell. And here is more from Michael Caputo. Quote, "Forget all about the death threats against my family. I want to know who cost us so much money, who crushed our kids, who forced us out of our home, all because you lost an election," Caputo said. "I want to know because God damn you to hell." Close quote. Yeah, I want to know too, and I want the people at the heart of this investigation to be put in jail. Some of them deserve far worse, but I'll be satisfied with a long jail sentence. And if they won't accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior and repent and seek to undo the damage that they've done to Michael Caputo, I say, God damn them to hell. Anyway, okay, next. Trump escalates GOP's clash with Justice Department, from the Chicago Tribune. Trump himself pretty much says it all. Quote, "A rigged system. They don't want to turn over documents to Congress. What are they afraid of? Why so much redacting? Why such unequal justice? At some point I will have no choice but to use the powers granted to the presidency and get involved," the president tweeted Wednesday morning. Close quote. The fact that the Department of Justice refuses to release the instructions given to Mueller, that smells so bad it's insane that we're even talking about this. It has become increasingly clear that the DOJ is a socialist and Democrat institution that is only interested in crushing anyone who opposes their agenda. I have my criticisms of Donald Trump, but there is one thing he has done, among many things, that is a gift to all of us. He has exposed the insane corruption in Washington, D.C. I'll still hold the Donald's feet to the fire for the things that he does and that I disagree with, but I will bless him for that. Next, Trump threatens to get involved in DOJ fight. Schumer flips out. Zero Hedge. Here's even more on the attempt by dirtbags to try and trick Trump into something that they can turn around and accuse him of perjury. I get so tired of people like this. I want Mueller fired and investigated. I want everyone at the DOJ investigated and fired if there is any hint of corruption. I want everybody at the FBI headquarters fired and investigated. Can you get a theme here? I want everybody at the CIA fired and investigated. I want Langley, where the CIA is, to be paved over and turned into a nice big parking lot. Let's see. What else do I want? Does anyone want to add their own ones? Please add them in the comment section below. Don't hesitate to like this video and subscribe. Okay, Moving on to economic and financial collapse. This one is Running on Empty by Robert Gore from Straight Line Logic. There's nothing like having the older generation destroy the survival of the younger generation, and that is exactly what this pension crisis is. In America, instead of the older generation trying to leave something behind for their children and grandchildren, the baby boomers are burying their children alive. They did it to us, and now we have a bleak future as a result. Then on to Gog and Magog. Again, I've been writing about Gog and Magog for a while, and you can find a lot of that at ezekielsfire.com. And the articles below point to what is coming. I really hope that you'll be ready for this. Please read Ezekiel's Fire to make sure, and yes, it is free. This one is Eurasia Torn Between War and Peace from Asia Times. The writer of this piece, Pepe Escobar, is an idiot. And I rarely quote his articles because he demonstrates his stupidity so regularly and with such stunning idiocy. Even this article is a prime example of his penchant for the foolish. But he does provide some nuggets of truth, so I will hold my nose and present them to you. Quote, in a notorious trip to Iran right after the signing of the JCPOA in 2015, President Xi Jinping backed up an ambitious plan to increase bilateral trade by over tenfold to US $600 billion in the next decade. For Beijing, Iran is an absolutely key hub of the new Silk Road, or the Belt and Road Initiative as it's called. A key BRI project is the $2.5 billion, 926-kilometer high-speed railway from Tehran to Mashhad. For that, China came up with a $1.6 billion loan, the first foreign-backed project in Iran after the signing of the JCPOA, which is the Iran nuclear deal that Obama produced. Close quote. I don't agree that Iran is a hub, but it is vital to China's attempt to create an overland trade route through Asia. So China is creating a favorable climate all along this land route. And it's not just Russia. Here's this, have Sukhoi will travel. Russia, quote, Russia mirrors and more than matches the Chinese business offensive in Iran. With snail-paced progress when it comes to buying American or European passenger jets, Osman Airlines decided to buy 20 Sukhoi Superjet 100s, while Iran Air Tours, a subsidiary of Iran Air, has also ordered another 20. The deals, worth more than $2 billion, were clinched at the 2018 Eurasia Air Show at Antalya International Airport, which I've been through several times, in Turkey last week, supervised by Russia's Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade, Oleg Bocharov. Or is it Bokharov? Probably Bokharov. Both Iran and Russia are fighting U.S. sanctions. Despite historical frictions, Iran and Russia are getting closer and closer. Tehran provides crucial strategic depth to Moscow's Southwest Asia presence, and Moscow unequivocally supports the JCPOA. Moscow-Tehran is heading the same way of the strategic partnership in all but name between Moscow and Beijing. Close quote. Unfortunately, poor Pepe Escobar heads downhill with his article soon after that quote. It's as if he understands nothing about Israel, Islam, and the Muslim world's fanatical desire to destroy Israel. It's as if he has no concept of history and its influence on the future. But you can't fix morons, so I won't try. The bottom line is that both China and Russia are throwing Iran a big lifeline. Iran will be able to trade with the outside world through China and Iran and continue the insane, despotic theocracy that has been a plague on the world. The next is Israel and Iran on path to war as Mideast tinderbox awaits spark. This is from Bloomberg. This is a deeply flawed article that does have some good points. Quote, now the Iranians in Syria have graduated from helping Assad to building their strategic presence against Israel, said Paul Salam, Senior Vice President at the Middle East Institute in Washington. It appears that neither the Russians nor the Assad regime are in control or can limit these things, he said. The situation is highly unstable and highly unmanaged. There's another quote from the article. Earlier in the Syrian conflict, Israel's airstrikes typically aimed to destroy weapons convoys bound for Hezbollah in Lebanon. There's been a significant change. 2 strikes in the past month, widely attributed to Israel, though the Jewish state doesn't comment on such matters, targeted permanent infrastructure used by Iran's forces. Both took place deep inside Syrian territory. It's short-sighted. It's hard to say that. It's short-sighted to look at it in terms of how many kilometers from the border Iran is sitting, said Amos Gilad, who recently stepped down as Director of Political and Military Affairs at Israel's Defense Ministry. Iran cannot be allowed to base themselves militarily in Syria, and Israel is fully determined to prevent that. Close quote. That's the first paragraph. I'm sorry, that first paragraph is the one that worries the Israelis and worries me, and should worry you. The Iranians in Syria have graduated from helping Assad to building their strategic presence against Israel. And then neither the Russians nor the Assad regime are in control or can limit these things. Assad depends too much on Iran's involvement in this civil war to try and push the Iranians out of Syria. Without the Iranians, the Syrians would have lost, and the Syrians aren't strong enough to ask the Iranians to go back. That's assuming that Syria doesn't want the Iranians in their territory. Syria has been helping Iran and Lebanon for a very, very long time, and Syria might welcome Iranian bases in Syria. And Russia's growing alliance with Iran is along the same lines. Russia might want Iran in Syria precisely because they scare the Israelis. The problem for Russia in Syria is that Israel tends to destroy those who threaten them, and that could spark the next big war in the Middle East. And Russia, Syria, and Iran will only have themselves to blame. Oh, and the flaws in this article? One gigantic one is the claim that Israel was the one to start the Six-Day War in 1967. Sorry, but that was the fault of the Arabs. Israel merely preempted the war so that it could be waged on her terms and not on those ready to attack her. In every occasion in which Israel went to war, the Arabs were the ones who started it, always and every time. The next war will be no different. Now on to the Israel section. My goal in the Israel section is that you would be greatly blessed. But you cannot be blessed if you oppose God. Psalm 122 verse 6 says, "Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Sha'alu shalom leYerushalayim. They shall prosper that love thee." May you prosper, and may you understand how important the land of Israel is in these last days. So on to the first article. Israel's Mossad spy agency shrouded in mystery and mystique. AP News, themonitor.com. This is a short summary of the article. Is a short summary of Mossad's accomplishments. The mystique surrounding Mossad is mostly the overblown imagination of anti-Semites and those who think more positively of Israel. The truth is that Mossad is a small organization that is only one of several intelligence organizations of Israel's Shutei B'Tichon Klali, or General Security Services, and usually referred to as Shin Bet, although sometimes is referred to as Shabak. And its single largest task is information gathering and analysis. Whatever operational capability it has, such as assassinations, is extremely minor, and I suspect that most of those operations are carried out by other more secret organizations within Shin Bet. And remember that Israel is a country of almost 9 million people, and a little over 6.5 million of those are Jewish. New York or Los Angeles would probably have a larger intelligence service than Israel. Only a tiny fraction of any population is suitable for intelligence work, and when the population of a country is as small as Israel's is, you can only have a truly tiny intelligence organization. To put it another way, when they captured Adolf Eichmann, Mossad used up 25% of its budget and a huge part of its small manpower to do that. So for those who are always speaking of Mossad this or Mossad that, only an idiot does that. And I get really tired of idiots. But I understand that most of you mean well. So I'm not going to complain too much. Okay, the next is U.S. officials, Israel preparing for war with Iran, seeking U.S. support from Zero Hedge. Unfortunately, Israel doesn't have any choice in the matter. Iran is moving more and more weapons, troops, and ammunition into Syria and Lebanon. And it should be clear to anyone with more than 2 brain cells to rub together that those troops and weapons are intended for use against Israel. And Israel has an overriding war-fighting doctrine. All combat should occur outside of Israel. Israel does not have the strategic depth to allow the enemy to set so much as a foot inside of Israel. Israel's enemies had a choice. Some chose peace, and they are prospering. Syria chose poorly. They will suffer for that choice. I don't like it, but that's the way it is. And a lot of Israelis will die as well. Far too many. Okay, the next is FDR wanted Jews spread thin and kept outside of the U.S. Documents reveal from the diaspora section of the Jerusalem Post. This is more evidence of how evil Franklin Delano Roosevelt was, the U.S. president during World War II. When the Jews were fleeing Hitler, FDR closed the doors to America. Instead of saving them from massacre and genocide, he condemned them to the most horrible deaths imaginable. And he did it on purpose. Franklin Dirtbag Roosevelt. Thankfully, God killed him before he could deny Israel's ability to become an independent state. Think of what would happen if he had still been around when Israel declared independence and Truman was given the job of acknowledging Israel. Again, I'm glad that FDR was dead by the time that happened. Okay, on to the next one. BDS is the symptom, not the disease, from the Jerusalem Post. BDS, of course, means boycott, divestment, and something. I'm not sure what the S is, sorry. Okay, unfortunately, this is the truth. It would be wonderful to just shut the BDS morons up and go on to the other things. But anti-Semitism is endemic in the U.S. and everywhere. And while the author of this piece doesn't lay the blame at its source, you and I know who is responsible. Satan. If you are against Israel, you are in allegiance with Satan. It's that simple. Well, that's it for last week's article and the ShockCast. I was in Hualien over the weekend and was unable to do a ShockCast, and Lord willing, we'll be able to get the ShockCast more on time in the next article that comes out. My hope is that you have a great week, and that over the coming weekdays that you'll be able to prosper and do well. This is John Little of the ShockCast, Omega Shock, Ezekiel's Fire, and a host of other things. See you next time.